All right, in this video, I'm going to explain the homework, which is due on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. It's for writing a lab procedure. So before we begin, what are we doing and why? You're going to write a lab procedure in that Google Doc you looked at last week. And this lab procedure is for measuring the density of an unknown liquid. And in next class, Tuesday for odd block and Wednesday for even block, another group will test your lab procedure and give you feedback so that you can use that feedback to help you write a strong lab procedure. And that will be important because that's part of your performance task, one of the major assessments for the unit. And in that performance task, remember, you are writing a lab procedure for measuring the densities of 3 unknown objects and also testing them. Okay, so what do you need to do? Everything that you're writing is going to go into that Google Doc that you can access on Google Classroom. So why don't you take a minute and pause the video as necessary. Go to Google Classroom and open up the Write a Lab Procedure document. Okay, once you have that open, your homework is to do the first 4 parts of a general lab procedure. Those parts are the purpose, safety, materials, and the procedure section. The procedure is where you write the steps. The last 2 parts, data and the analysis section, we're going to skip that for now. So just do the first 4. So in that Google document, you need a space for your procedure, for your purpose, safety, materials, and procedure. And if you don't have it typed in already, take a moment and pause the video and type those in now. Okay, once you have those 4 parts typed in, the next thing you're going to need in order to fill it out is the handout that you had in last class, and that is the Writing Lab Procedure Workspace handout. So I want you to take a moment to find that handout, and again, pause the video as necessary. All right, now that you have that handout, we're going to start with the purpose. That's the first section. So the purpose is real simple. You go to the second page of your handout. It should actually say 2A here because it's part 2A. You will find the purpose written down. You can just copy this or rewrite this in your own words and type this into the purpose section. So take a minute to pause the video and get that typed in. Okay, so on that same page, now we're moving down to part 2B. So this should say 2B, by the way. It says on the same page, just scroll down. You see the table there at the bottom where you're determining the materials and the equipment. So for the safety section, you should have written something down in the 3rd column about how to use the equipment safely. And remember, we got that from the handout that had images, hand-drawn images of all of the lab equipment, its uses, and the safety. And the safety was marked with a star. So in your group work, you wrote down how to use the equipment you were using safely. You're going to, whatever you wrote here, or you can rewrite it in a different way, you're going to plop that into your safety section. So type that in. For the materials, you're just going to list the materials that are written in the 2nd column. So whatever you wrote in the 2nd column, list those materials. If there are other materials that you feel are necessary, you can add those as well, but it should be at least the materials you have written in the 2nd column. Take a moment to fill out the safety and the materials section of your document. Okay, now that you have the safety and materials, now we need to write the purpose. And this actually requires 2 steps. Some of this or all of this you've already done with your group members, and so maybe you're well ahead, but for other folks, if you weren't able to do this, this is what we were doing in class. So the first 2 steps is to order the measurements. In that handout that I gave you, there was a list of measurements, and one of the first things you did was you ordered them just by writing down number 1 through 7 near each measurement. Once you have those measurements ordered, you don't need to rewrite them on that document. You just need to take those ordered measurements and then turn them into procedures. So I'm going to illustrate that on the next slide. So we're going to start with the ordered measurements. You're going to turn to part 3A, which is on page 3, I believe, of your handout, and you'd see this table here. it lists 7 measurements and you're ordering them 1 through 7. Measurement 1 is the first one you take and measurement 7 is the last one. So remember, when I demonstrated a little bit of this to you, we noted that the mass of the graduated cylinder is what we would be taking first. So the mass of the empty graduated cylinder before we pour any liquids in it. And so we just labeled that as 1 because that's our first measurement. If you haven't done so, take a moment to order the rest of them first. The first one's already done, but do steps 2 through 7. Remember 7 being your last step. All right, once all of your steps, your measurements are ordered, you're going to use these same measurements to write steps. So what do I mean by that? For this, you want to go to part 3B, which is on the 4th page of your handout. And as you recall, we have these sentence frames. So you're going to take each of the measurements that you had on the previous page and turn them into a step using these sentence frames. So what do I mean by that? Here's an example. Our first step was the mass of the graduated cylinder. So I know I need to take that measurement. What is the action I'll be doing? And in the sentence frames, we begin with verbs, and then there's adjectives and nouns. You don't have to fill in all the adjectives, or maybe there's things that you want to add to this. That's totally fine, but this just gives you a general sense of what the step would sound like. So in the case of getting the mass of the graduated cylinder, the action I'll be taking, or the verb, is to weigh it. So I'm going to weigh, and then the thing I'm weighing is an empty graduated cylinder. So I just kind of checked off the things that made sense. And what will I be using to do that? What equipment? I would use an electronic balance, right? So here I just wrote that out. And so this first step matches my first measurement. You're going to do that for all the other measurements. So whatever you have as measurement 2, like maybe your measurement 2 was the mass of the graduated cylinder plus the liquid, trial 1. If that was your step 2, you would use these sentence frames again to turn that measurement into a step, just like we did here, where we took the measurement 1 and wrote it down as a step using these sentence frames. Take a moment to do that. You can either write that on underneath this sentence frame. There's a table there for room for you to do that, or you can type that directly into your document. Okay, so at this moment, all 7 steps, if you haven't typed them into the document, make sure you type them in. You should have them written down, or you've typed them directly here. So, but in either case, they need to be typed in this document. So all 7, I only listed steps 1, 2, and 3 here, but remember there should be a total of at least 7 steps. You're going to write those into this procedure. Okay, so remember the purpose of this is that when you come in, I will either have it printed if it's done early, or I will have you share it with another group. So then that way they can use your procedure to give you feedback on your procedure. And if you have any further questions, particularly for Block 5, you can come and see me on lunch on Tuesday. Have a quality day, guys.